Hello, my dear friends, old and new. My name is Varun Khanna, and welcome to YS 211 Upanishads 2. I am so excited to be back to teach another Upanishads course. Don't worry, these courses are not sequential in any way, so if you haven't taken Upanishads 1, don't worry about it. I will still introduce the concept of an Upanishad again. The only difference between this and the last course is that the Upanishads we will be covering are different. But otherwise, there are no prerequisites to take this course. So welcome one and all. A little bit about myself. I was raised in Chicago, and I went to university in St. Louis. I studied math and neuroscience there. And at some point, I did a study abroad program where I went to India, and I went there to study Ayurveda. I wanted to study ancient Indian medicine and have it augment my future medical practice. But in the process, somebody told me that if I wanted to learn Ayurveda, I have to learn Sanskrit. So I was like, okay, and I started learning Sanskrit. And I ended up living in places where they only spoke Sanskrit all around India. And I became fluent in Sanskrit by the end of my program. And this resulted in a very profound change in my psychology. I didn't know what happened then, but I knew I was seeing the world in a totally different and new way. I learned later through my study of psycholinguistics that language is like a lens through which you see the world. And depending upon the lens, your vision of the world will be different. So for me, my lens went from thinking in English to thinking in Sanskrit very rapidly, and I witnessed this transformation. And because the way in which I was now seeing the world was so profound, I decided that there's enough people who will be doing what I was otherwise planning to do. Let me study Sanskrit and see where that takes me. And so I went back to India after I graduated, and I studied in different jungles from different teachers. I studied philosophy, I studied Sanskrit grammar, all in the medium of Sanskrit. And finally, I went to Cambridge University. I did my master's in Sanskrit. And then I asked myself the question, if language is the lens through which you see the world, then who am I who sees the world through that lens? And that is the question that the Upanishads propose to answer. So in this course, we are going to cover 3 Upanishads. Those are Isha Upanishad, Praśna Upanishad, and Muṇḍaka Upanishad. And the format of the course will be that we will have 45 minutes of reading time. We will read directly from the Sanskrit, see what the Upanishads have to say. We're going to read them on their own terms and try to really just understand the words of the Upanishads themselves. And then there will be a 45 minutes of Q&A. So that'll be your chance to bring your questions, whether it's from that session or from a previous session. And I want it to be an open forum where we can really bring our doubts and our questions and our own personal thoughts to our reading of the Upanishads and put them in conversation with each other. So let us have a dialogue with the Upanishads. I'm not a teacher of the Upanishads, but I consider myself more like a co-student. So together we will investigate what the Upanishads have to offer. And if you have questions and I can answer them, then I will. And if I can't, then we will look into it together and see what we come up with. So we have 45 minutes of reading and 45 minutes of Q&A. And there is also a discussion forum online. So after you join, you will be part of an online forum with all the other students. And that's another place where you can post your questions, post your reflections, and have other students comment on them and have a dialogue amongst yourselves. I think that's really one of the best things that that people can take advantage of. And it also puts you into a community with other people who are learning the same thing as you, which is quite a beautiful thing. Each week after we do our readings, there will be a multiple choice quiz. And so there will be 6 quizzes in all, once a week. And these quizzes will just basically recap some of the information. It's just to make sure that you're actually, reading and understanding what is there in the texts. So the three Upanishads, the first one is Isha Upanishad that we are covering. This one is perhaps the most famous Upanishad of all. It is taught first in traditional institutes of learning where they teach the Upanishads. And it's very short. It's a very quick read, but very, very profound. So profound that even people like Mahatma Gandhi commented on this Upanishad, saying that if all the literature of India was to somehow perish, and but even the first line of the Isha Upanishad was to remain, then all of that civilization would be preserved. So it's a very profound Upanishad. We're going to start there, just dive right in and see some beautiful, beautiful philosophy from the Upanishad. Then we move into the Praśna Upanishad. The Praśna Upanishad is the story of sage Pippalada, who has 6 students who come to him and ask him 6 different questions. And so the word for question in Sanskrit is Praśna, hence it is the Praśna Upanishad, the Upanishad where these 6 questions get asked. And of course, those questions are about the nature of the self, the nature of immortality. And so we will see Pippalada's answers to his students' questions. And then finally, we will read the Muṇḍaka Upanishad. And the Muṇḍaka Upanishad is the story of Shaunaka, who comes to ask sage Angiras some questions. He wants to ask him about the secrets of Brahman. And so he says, what is it by knowing which a person comes to know this whole world? So we will spend the duration of this course trying to understand the answer to that question. And by the end of it, I hope that you will all gain an understanding and an appreciation for Upanishadic philosophy, the format of the Upanishads, the content of the Upanishads, how they present their information, and perhaps even more. So welcome to the course. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey of reading the Upanishads together. And I'm very excited to have us all back together on Zoom so that we can study together once again. So welcome, and I will see you all very soon.